Hi, everyone. It is 3:10. Good afternoon. I'm Cathy Coloff. Thank you for joining us today and our second one of our series on teams and trying to rev up how you use team and your team's experience. Last time I got a question about this, so I thought I'd just address it up front. I'm using Zoom today because it's difficult to demo the Teams features. If you're in Teams at the moment, I would run the risk of actually disconnecting you. So we're using Zoom so that you can sort of be an observer on the outside of things that you can do in Teams. There are a few new people here with us today. And so I've been in the IT business for 30 years. IT Radix is here in northern New Jersey. We were founded in 2008. We have a fabulous team of 30 people. I have a few of them on the call with us today. I'll introduce them in just a second. I'm proud of some of the things that we've accomplished over the years, and we really try to run the organization based off of our core values. So behind the scenes today, we've got Ken, who is our just in case today. He is just in case. He'll be helping us with some of the team's features. And we also have Rachel Pesci, who is also going to be a guest of ours in our team's environment today. And our Wizard of Oz is Dan Parzanis. And he will be, if you have any questions or anything, if you could post them in the chat, and he will give me a nudge if I miss them. And we will try to answer your questions throughout the webinar. So with that, I'm going to get going. So one of the things that I like to say and I would be remiss if I didn't say it pretty much every time we talk, there's a lot of flexibility in Teams, and it's really important that you keep security in mind as you're using Teams. And so, because no matter how strong of security systems and things that we put in place, whether it's on the teams on the back end or on the individual user machines, the user themselves is always one of the weakest links because we can't control everything that they do. And so one small mistake can expose your security. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the security here in Teams today. I thought today what I would do is focus on meetings and some of the features that are in Teams and show you how you might be able to leverage some of those. But again, the thing with Teams is the flexibility. So it's really important for you to get to know your team and your teams so that as you're using them, you're being appropriately secure and safe in your actions. So meetings, overdrive. Let's turn this up a little bit. So I'm going to demo all of these things. I'm going to just give you a quick little highlight of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about teams versus channels and some of the info you can get about those. There's meeting now, or there's scheduling, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Meeting options, how to manage your calendar, and then just the overall meeting management. I think most people know that you can get an app on your phone for Teams, but I'm going to remind you, Teams is available in the web. You can download it as an application on your Windows or Mac desktop, and you can also download it as an app on your various smartphone platforms. We find that most people seem to prefer the downloaded app, but you can certainly run a lot of this through the web. All right, so now it's time to break out here and do a quick demo. So here we are in our Teams, and this is the Teams app, as I mentioned. You need to, if you look on the left, give me 1 second. I'm just going to organize my screens on the left over here. So if you look down the left, there's the activity, chat, Teams. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time in the Teams area here. So the chat is intended to be one-to-one conversations or one to several folks conversations where you selectively pick who you want to chat with. In the Teams area, you can also do chats and you can have meetings and things of that nature, but typically they are controlled, at least at the top level, by your system administrator, and then your system administrator can delegate who is able to add and remove people, for example, from your teams. So in today's world, or in today's demo, what we're doing is we are visiting the happiest IT team on earth, which is called My IT Radix. And I am B connected. And Ken works at the happiest IT team on earth as well. And he is Justin Case. So Justin and B both work at the happiest IT team on earth company. And Rachel is going to be one of our guests as we go through here. So one of the first things you want to kind of understand is who is in your teams. So if you were to click on the happiest IT team at Earth and click on the general channel, you'll notice up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a few pieces of information here. There's the team that sort of shows you who can see what, but if you want to drill in and see the actual details, if you click on this I, it will show you everybody who's a member of the team. In this case, this is strictly internal folks. It's just Justin and myself, B. If you're a guest, or if we come down to this other team called Be Our Guest, in this one, if I click on the exact same little button, you'll notice here first it says organizational wide and 2 guests. So that gives you the high level of who's a member of these teams. But if you click on the information button, you can see that there's 10 members of this team, of which myself, B, and Justin, both who are essentially staff or employees of this company, are in it. And then there's a bunch of guest accounts in here that you can see, some of which you can see are test accounts that we use. But here's Rachel. She's one of the guests, as is Dan. Okay. So if you want to see who is able to see what, if you're not sure who's a member of the teams, Tomorrowland, for example, you can come in here and just click on that info and you can see who's a member of the team. You'll notice, let's take a quick look back up here at this team, you notice that there's a little padlock here. That means that this channel, which is below this team, is restricted to a certain number of people. And if you click on the channel, and then you click on the I, it will tell you who's a member. In this case, it's just myself. So if you see that little padlock there, that means it's a subset of the people that are in the team as a whole, okay? All right, so what we want to do today, as I mentioned, we're going to focus in on having, focus in on meetings. So there's a few ways that you can get meetings scheduled. You can click on here and you'll see that that'll just launch a Meet Now. If I'm going to hit the drop down, Meet Now, which means it launches a meeting right then and there with everybody who is a member of the team. Or you can choose to schedule a meeting. So I'm going to click on schedule so we can see how this works. You can put the time in here, the title of the meeting. You can put who you'd like to invite. So let's say I want to invite, let me put the title here is Showtime, okay? And I'm going to invite Justin. If I start typing Justin, his name will pop in there. I can choose this optional button and I can make people be optional if I choose to do that. So perhaps I'll invite Rachel as an optional person. Whoops, hold on, I gotta put her email address because she's a guest. So once you do, if you have a guest, you typically have to type out their entire email address in order to get that in there. You would set the date and time all day, if it's repeating or not. And then you can choose what channel, if you are so inclined, what channel you would like it to be in. In this case, since I launched it from the general channel, it automatically populated that in there. You could certainly add in a location if you're doing some sort of a physical meeting. And then certainly if you wanted to put any kind of details, agenda, things of that nature, you can type that in here. The other thing I wanted to show you is the scheduling assistant. So if you're trying to invite several people, you'll notice that I had included Justin. Justin is a member of this organization. So it's showing me his calendar and I can see that he's actually busy right here at 3 p.m. And that's because he's on this call with us, but the rest of his schedule is pretty wide open. So I could pick another time. But because Rachel is a guest, you notice that everything is marked as unknown. We don't know what Rachel's schedule is because it's not shared with us. So we can't actually predict that she would be available tomorrow at 9 o'clock, for example. But you could use this to help you set the time that you would like to schedule the meeting for. So that's under the scheduling assistant, and this is the details. I'm going to hit close. If I were to hit send, it would then send them a meeting invite. and I'm going to discard this because I don't actually want to save that. But what I wanted to do next was show you a little bit about how this looks on your calendar. So on your calendar, you'll see that you get these calendar invites, and you notice there's a join button, which I can join the meeting right away. But one of the things I wanted to show you in this case, Justin had invited me to the meeting about Dumbo. And if I click on it, right click, I can choose to accept or be tentative or decline the meeting appointment. I could also choose to chat with him in advance about the meeting. So these are all things that you can do. You right click, you find the meeting, you'll get that meeting invite. You have to then come in here and hit accept. You noticed, I don't know if you saw that, it went from a little line that was showing tentative to now a solid line. That means I have accepted the meeting. I am no longer tentative. I believe you can right click and you can and change your mind. So I'm going to change myself back to tentative. So maybe I'll be there, maybe not. We'll see, Justin, how that goes. And so now what I'd like to do is I'm going to join this meeting that we've scheduled. So I've pre-scheduled this meeting with myself and with Justin, Case, and Rachel. So if Justin, Case, and Rachel could join me in this meeting. Let's see, some of the things that you want to do. Once you're in the meeting, I wanted to run through some of the settings that you could have in here. So you'll notice that Rachel is waiting in the lobby. So you can configure the meeting to have a waiting room, and I'll back up and show you that in a little bit. So I'm going to allow or admit Rachel into the meeting. And you notice Justin I didn't get that prompt. That's because I configured the meeting to allow him, since he's in my company, to just come in without sitting in the waiting room. And so let me back up for 1 second. I'm gonna go back into this meeting and I wanna show you that. So in the meeting options, this option here is not available until after you've scheduled the meeting. But once you click on the meeting options, we'll wait a minute here. What it's going to do is show you what the options are. Oops, I'm gonna have to get the password. Bear with me for 1 second. Come over here, give me a second. I'm gonna pop this password in here. And it's going to show me the meeting options. Now these are set at the corporate level, and then you can override them by choosing these meeting options. You may want to discuss in your organization how you want this to be set at the top level so that you don't have to remember to come in here and change these. But these are a recommended starting point that we typically recommend. So you'll notice it says people in my organization can bypass the lobby. Callers. So if somebody's calling into the meeting and by just a phone, you can allow them to bypass the lobby. You can also have it, but when they do join, you could have it where it announces them. It'll say, you know, caller XYZ is joining or leaving the meeting. You'll hear a voice say that in the meeting. And then you can also restrict who can and cannot present inside of the meeting. And so you can choose that here. And I should show you the drop down here. So in the drop down, you can see if you want to allow it so that Rachel could have just come right in, you can change that so she was allowed to bypass the lobby altogether. You make whatever changes you want, you hit save, and you're good to go. So again, that's meeting options, and it's under after you've scheduled the meeting. So here we are back to our meeting, which was here. And we've got, you know, Justin and Rachel. And I'm chattering on. I'm not really giving them a chance to say anything. So, you know, Rachel may need to raise her hand to get my attention. So you'll notice this little hand button up here. So Rachel raised her hand. So now I know who raised her hand, and she did that by clicking on the little raise your hand icon here. You can also open the chat button on the side here, and you can chat as well as do the video and speaking during the meeting. If you want to do a roll call, let's say you're maybe doing a whole bunch of people in the meeting. Let's see, where's that? I'm gonna make that bigger maybe. That shows up, let me close the chat button. I believe it shows up right. You choose participants. Oops, I'm sorry. You choose participants, which is this icon here. Here's the participants, and you'll get a little download icon here where it says download attendance list. So if you have a lot of people and you don't necessarily want to sit there and chat, jot down who's there. You could click on download the attendance list. So that's one thing you could do. We talked about the announcing, the RSVP. You can chat in advance. You can raise your hand. And then now we're done with this meeting. As the meeting organizer, I could choose to just leave and let Rachel and Justin continue to chat, or I could say end meeting for all, and then that would then at that point disconnect them and they could no longer converse after the meeting is over. I believe that brings me to the end of what I wanted to demo today on meetings, because we're trying to stay within that 10-minute time frame, and I've already gone over my 10 minutes. So if you have any questions about this, this is the time or your chance to do that. If there's any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak. Oh, actually, I see one of the questions that I glossed over that I'm going to address right now. So this is actually a good one. The calendar. So the calendar that's here, this is very confusing to people. Some people think there's a Teams calendar and there's an Outlook calendar. They're one and the same. They are 100% integrated. So if you have an appointment in your Teams calendar, you're going to have an appointment in your Outlook calendar and vice versa. So Outlook and Teams, those two calendars are talking to each other automatically on the back end, and so they should stay in sync as you move things around. Any other questions that come up? Let's see.
I had a question about recording meetings.
Yes. So when you record them, they stay in the Teams channel, and you can, when you come out, so like in this case, I scheduled this through the general. And if I recorded that meeting, this one that was here, this Rev Up Your Teams for, if I had recorded that meeting, the recording would pop in here and you can get to it inside of here. The other thing that I should have shown, that while I was in the meeting, you can actually take meeting notes. So like if you're in a meeting, when you're in the meeting, there's on the same little radio buttons there's these meeting notes, and I like it because you can sit here and just type in your notes as you're going along through the meeting, and these are viewable by everybody who's in, who has permissions to the channel that you're putting the notes in. So in this case, we were in the Be Our Guest team and general channel, so everyone in that team could see the notes even if they weren't in the meeting, okay? If it ends up in one of these restricted channels, then they're not gonna be able to see the notes. And you can record a meeting, so that'll just, and it'll save it as a, I think it's an MP4 format, but I can't swear to that. I don't know if you know the answer to that, Dan. Let's see. What else? Let's see. Is a dial number associated with an individual, meaning the number cannot be shared with others in your office? So the way Microsoft works is that if you wanted to do a dial-in number for a meeting, typically what you do is you get one for your organization, and then they put this little pin behind it. So the phone number, so if multiple people have the ability to schedule audio conference call meetings, so let's say you have both myself and Justin could have that ability to do that. And Justin organizes the meeting. The invite will go out, and he will have the phone number in that his meeting invite, and it's associated with his PIN. So he could have a separate meeting than I as B could have, but the phone number itself is actually the same, but it knows when you call in that it's attached to the PIN and it's attached to the meeting that you're doing. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. The other one is, should we stop doing things in Outlook and start doing things in Teams? So you can certainly schedule things in the calendar, for example, and it'll show up in Outlook and vice versa. Or if you're, let me pull up, let's see, let me show you here to answer this question. So like here you are in Outlook. I'm using the web version of Outlook, but as B, you could certainly, you'll notice when you're in here in Outlook on the calendar, you can schedule a Teams meeting in here as well, which I admit I don't use this calendar very often. So I'm gonna struggle a tiny bit, but if I did a new event, I could make it be a Teams meeting in here. So It just depends on your preference. I mean, if you want to send an email, I will say I find it a little more convenient in Outlook to schedule a Teams meeting because it remembers the email addresses. So if I'm trying to invite somebody who's outside of my organization, it'll remember, for example, that I want to invite somebody like my mom and dad outside of the organization to the meeting. I can put, Stan Koloff in there, and it'll pre-populate his email address in there. So I find that sometimes Outlook is a little more convenient in terms of inviting people outside of your organization, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't just invite them over in Teams. You just have to either add them to manually to the list. Does that answer that question? Hopefully. Any other questions that I missed, Dan?
That is all I see for now. Regarding the meeting recordings, they come up on Microsoft Stream, where you can stream them, and then from there you can download an MP4 as well.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so Stream, I'll just show that real quick. So Stream is accessible. You choose the app launcher in the upper left corner. And then if you were to click under the all apps, Stream will be listed here. And if you have any meeting recordings, which I don't believe we've actually done in this is a demo environment, but if we had some, that's where they would show up here, and then you can choose to download them as well or share them from here. So I think that's it. We recorded the tips for today. Would love to have some feedback. So if you could fill out the feedback form that we're going to send you. We are recording this as well, and it will be available from our website. But if you have any other questions or thoughts about future ones, please let us know. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to having you join us again soon.